I'd like to flip that around and say, what are the affirmative arguments for non-belief or for atheism?
Well, I think the first one, it simply has to be, this is the way naturalism always argues. I mean, the burden of proof is sort of on the other side. Don't multiply entities beyond necessity. So the main reason for atheism is, what for? What do we need God for? Especially since we've got a surfeit of reasons for seeing why, in the absence of a God, we would nevertheless believe in God. I mean, there's plenty of natural arguments explaining why this false belief would arise. So we don't have the puzzle of, gosh, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire, where there's so much belief that God must exist. No, I think we can just set that aside. So now
as neutral.
As neutral, yeah. So that cuts no real ice here. So now the question is, if there's no positive argument for the existence of God, then we should just assume there isn't one.
Okay, guys, so very interesting clip by Daniel Dennett, where he's basically saying, what do we need God for? Don't, you know, apply the principle, do not multiply entities beyond the necessity, meaning that there's no reason to believe in God. Therefore, anyone that makes a claim of God, well, the onus of proof is on them. They have to just prove why they believe God exists. Well, I think he's misrepresenting and he's got some things wrong here. He's assuming there's no good reasons to believe in God, right? When that's simply not the case. I mean, if you just for a moment think about our own existence, if we think about the existence of this entire universe that we live in, this entire cosmos, how do we make sense of all of this in the absence of God? I mean, think about it for a second. Say you remove God from the picture. There is no creator, there is no God. What do you have? You just have an existence which has come via random accidental processes, just random physical, you know, atoms, molecules whizzing around that have been colliding into each other for God knows how long, that have resulted in everything that we see around us today. Now, if that's the case, how are we to make sense of the origins of the universe? That this stuff sort of supposedly just came out at random. How do we make sense of the fine-tuning and the order of the universe? How do we make sense of the laws that govern this universe? How do we make sense of our rational faculties? How do we make sense of our truth-bearing rational faculties? How do we make sense of morality? How do we make sense of meaning, purpose, value, these things that we hold dear to ourselves, which we can't account for in the absence of God? How do we make sense of any of these things? We can't, right? And if we really, therefore, if we really reflect upon existence, the existence of the universe, our own existence, our own faculties, on all of these things, we would come to the conclusion that there has to be a creator, a cause, something out there. There will be more than ample reasons to assume this, right? So I would argue that the correct application of that principle, do not multiply entities beyond necessity, is to assume that there's one all-powerful creator that created everything, maintains everything, and is sustaining everything. And this, by the way, is exactly in line with what Islam teaches us about God, that God is uniquely one, all-powerful, able to do all things. He created everything, maintains everything, and sustains everything, right? Now, let me give you an analogy, just so it may put things into perspective. Imagine you're sitting at home, and you're watching the TV, and you hear a knock on the door, okay? Now, what do you assume? Intuitively and rationally, what's the assumption? What's the conclusion you come to? Well, you say someone is there, right? You wouldn't turn around and say no one is there and carry on watching TV, because you know at least one person is required for the door to knock. In a very similar way, when we reflect upon this cosmos, this universe, our own existence, there is a knocking, if you like, at the doors of our intellects. Why are these things the way they are? What resulted in the order that we find these things in? Right? This begs the question. And if we really think about and reflect upon this, it would lead us to the conclusion that there is a creator cause. Obviously, Daniel Dennett, at least in this clip, seems to have overlooked these things, and maybe he considers them in other places, but here at least he seems to just completely overlook all of these things, and therefore, you know, make the points that he's making. That being said, let me know your thoughts in the question section below. Let me know what you guys think about what we've just spoken about. Make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. And until next time, take care.